How are you, Elizabeth? How's the day been? How's the day treated you?
Um, Good. It's been it's been a rainy day here, a rainy autumn day, um, and very gentle. It was sweet. I spent some time with the neighbor, and just now before we met, I met with my with a sister with a friend of mine online to sing together and to just connect. Yeah, and I was already carrying our meeting in my presence. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that now.
Do, do you enjoy rainy days in particular?
Huh. It depends. It depends. I quite love the sunshine. And with the rain, some days I can like it feels just right, and some days it just feels a bit limiting. But today, when I was outside, I was like surprised as well by it because it was so gentle. And also today it felt really good because it felt very alive. Like all the birds felt so present all day long. Like all the singing and chattering. Yeah. So this one was definitely felt very cleansing in a way. Mm.
Very, very cleansing. Do you feel like you've always had a connection with the birds?
That is a fascinating question. Um, because I don't know. Like I can't specifically say I always had it, but at the same time I think I did. You know what I
You,
mean?
you think you did, but you don't know. You don't
Like
really know.
in that sense, I think there always was a lot of awareness to their presence and
Mm.
sound, especially the sound. You know, I come from a musical family, so everything that is sound is um, I'm very receptive to it. So in that sense, definitely, yeah, there always was connection to also to the birds singing.
So what led to
Okay,
what led to an
say it again.
oh go ahead. Go ahead.
I just saw that a friend of mine was joining as well.
Oh, is that Karina?
Yes, it's the one that I just met to sing with.
Hey there. Much love, Karina. Thanks for joining. So, how do you feel like that connection with the birds deepened, gradually? Because I just love how you describe them. You describe them differently from a lot of the friends that I have. They don't really notice or are aware enough of
Mm.
really present to feel that.
Oh, it's so interesting. Yeah. I feel like, there are especially certain birds that are like they come into you, like they just keep showing up. And and yet I think in general, like, I for 1 year I lived in a yurt and I lived in a kind of community space with a woman who was trained in the native tradition of an African tribe. And through kind of co-living with her, even though we were in different spaces, but we were in one community, I learned a lot of the ways and the awareness of that. And they're reconnecting with nature is such is the most fundamental thing to reconnect with ourselves and to heal and to find our way in life and our place and everything. And I think that definitely was also a phase where my awareness was enhanced, even though, as I think we might even have touched upon that last time as well, that like I grew up with compared to other people with quite a strong awareness to nature. Um, so yeah, and at that particular time, there were, for example, a few there were jays that lived in the or that used to come to visit the walnut tree that was next to the house, and like their presence and yeah, I think that kind of through allowing more of that, like allowing myself to just be in nature and observe. I think with that also the birds at times just, just as other spirit animals or just as other spirits are showing up in certain stages or time parts of our life to make us aware of certain things or to remind us of certain things. That is definitely also the case with birds. And actually in recent times it's birds a lot more for me as well. Like something very sweet here. I'm in my family home now at the moment, and my whole family, like my parents and me too, they have a very strong connection to the birds in general, but there's one robin that lives here, and it comes super, super close. Robins are generally known for being very upfront. They're not shy, and they have such a beautiful energy, and there's something so magical when a robin literally hops like straight to you. Sometimes like you might sit on a table or something and it hops right next to you, and it's just like it's observing you and you're observing the robin, and there's something happening there that you might not even be able to put into words, because it's like something is transmitted in that moment. One day, relatively recently, I was very sad, and like I could not, like I couldn't yet let it flow, and I was sitting in the garden, and that robin came to me, and I just started crying. And it was like the robin held the space for me, or shifted the space for me, so that I could let this deep pain be felt, be in motion. This emotion being an energy that comes back into motion. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that moment, because
Mm.
saying like in that moment, the robin helped you in the way you were able to release with the robin. The robin allowed you to release.
Mm. Maybe yes, through connecting. Like the robin took that time to connect with me, and that made me take that time to connect with myself and the robin, and maybe coming from a space where I was not that connected to myself or somebody else in that moment, because I felt loneliness. I like somebody I loved just left, and I was in that grief of feeling alone and maybe abandoned. So it was like this presence, brought this sense of reconnection and of just being felt. And I mean, probably for some people who never have been close to an animal, that might sound very strange to feel held or feel felt and understood or seen by another being. But that happens with not just with animals, with plants as well, with nature. It's it's a living being. Yeah.
Absolutely, because that is so touching. You just to hear your words when you're talking about it, describing that moment that the robin
Mm.
allowed you to reconnect, or it helped you relinquish that stress and even be held in that moment. Because how would that moment have been different for you if the robin was not there?
Mm. 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 In that moment, I was not able to tap into, or to allow myself to tap into those emotions on my own. So that was a gift of the robin. But that's also the thing with nature, with birds now, as we're speaking about birds, but or even without that we have to take that moment, like we have to take the invitation. The presence of the robin was an invitation, and it was my choice to take that invitation and to receive it, or to ignore it or neglect it.
Okay. So ultimately, the choice was up to you,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, the choice is up to us. what we
Yeah.
do, what we allow in, what we resonate with, what we choose. Yeah.
That, resonating. I'm really resonating with that, because how the Robin extended that invitation. Because would you say, when you're in that vibration, when you say that it's so important for us to reconnect to nature, why do you feel that we disconnect? Where do you feel is the great disconnect or the great divide? I see you
Um,
smiling.
mm. um, well, there are so many things to speak about in the sense of disconnection. Um, for me, on a very personal level, I I think that the disconnect comes from the wounds that we all have that are not processed individually, collectively, like in our families, the traumas, the pains, like all of this. Every wound brings a disconnection if we don't process it, because we pass it on. So and that made us over centuries develop a society that mirrors this disconnection. The way we live mirrors this disconnection from ourselves, from the elements, from nature. And for me personally, this has been also mirrored in my life in houses. I always felt, as soon as I'm in a closed room, I felt I'm cut off. And that's like I that was such a pain for me so long. And I'm like, now again, being kind of in a closed space for the first time in a while, I'm like facing the remains of that again. So it's like there are so many things where we face that disconnect. Also, for me, it's also like, now it's winter season here, and I see every year again how we disconnected from the elements, how we disconnect from the coldness outside, but as well from the element of fire, like the heating we have, the radiators. What there is no life in them. It's dead heat. You can feel the difference if you're standing in front of a radiator, or if you're in a room where the radiator is on, versus if you're standing in front of a fireplace. It feels completely different on every level, emotionally, physically. Your body feels different. And yeah, so there are so many little things where we can see this disconnection, where also, in a way, all those comforts that we created for ourselves, they they don't have to be, but in many cases they are coming from a place of disconnection, of not needing to do something, can also be not needing to engage with ourselves.
This this is really good stuff, because the not needing, not
Mm,
needing to engage, and having that disconnection. Because I like how you talked about so many of the elements, like connecting with
mm,
the elements, that even in these enclosed spaces, these walls that you now find yourself in, once again, you said it's like the remains of that pain.
mhm.
You're
Yeah,
facing the remains of the pain
yeah.
that are still there. So it's like, you feel like they have lingered for a long time?
Mm. I personally feel like that those we each have our own kind of themes of how our wounds, or how those things that we experienced in our lives that have shaped us, how they show up in our life. And to me, it's like a bit like a spiral. You get to face them again. You work through them. You evolve, and then you have to face them again in a different angle, in a different light, in a different notion, in a different environment. You learn something new every time, and yet they're not gone, and they also don't have to be gone, because it is about shifting your awareness every time a bit, and then you can shift your reaction. You can shift your response. You're not you're not it's not the only possibility you have to respond with the pain. Recently, I heard that again, and or someone was reminding me that suffering is a choice. One thing is what happens, and the other thing is what we do with it. And that's kind of, for me, we learn that when we acknowledge that we have those pains, and when we commit to working through them, because then with every time that we spiral off a bit, we have a different awareness, and we can choose differently, and we can respond differently. So this is for me also what I'm experiencing now here, and also every time I visited my parents in the past years, it was like every time I would come back to the same old, but at the same time, like, it's that invitation to, okay, how can I, how different can I respond this time? Like what, and even if it's just a subtlety, to acknowledge that, like, I managed to shift. It's not the same anymore, and that's also so important to bring awareness to for ourselves, so that we don't feel like we're stuck because we're experiencing the same thing again.
Yeah, great point. Great point, Elisabeth. Like you're the same old, but different. It's like you are different. And
Mm-hmm.
so even moving into the same environment, the same things, the same vibration, the same kind of conversations, you have different information, you know? So you bring that different sensation. It can make for less frustration when you come at it that way. You, like you say, from that vantage point, that angle, when you look at that perspective, from that point of view that is reflective. So, you know, it's interesting because when you're talking about shifting, when you're talking about new awarenesses, new things that are being brought out of you, I remember seeing recently that you said that you could no longer stand by your name in the same way as before, and you decided to change
Mm-hmm.
into something else. What inspired the new name?
Mm-hmm. The thing with the names is interesting. You know from my profile that I was like, my birth name is 3 names, and for a long time I was only going by Elisabeth. And at some point along that journey, I felt like acknowledging those different parts of my name, because there is a reason why we're given a name, and it's like it carries something. It's like, maybe on some level it's even a quest, who knows, but it's like there's something deeper to it, and kind of standing in that was important to me at that time. And it's also not that I'm not standing in that anymore, but I feel like I don't need to stand in that in a way that this is the first thing you get to see of me, but more that this is who I am, and that I would like to show you I guess at the moment, is that I would like to show what I want to transmit, what I want to give, so what wants to flow through me. So it's less about the me, but more about the through. Yeah. So that's the shift there.
So you're saying less about the you and more about what flows through, more about the channeling, or more about like what's coming through that?
Yeah, I mean, channeling is a part of it, but it's like just about what I can give, and what I want to create with what all of the, like, things that I can give. Last time we spoke about that bouquet of flowers, and it's like kind of sitting down and feeling into a name was that process of like feeling what is the essence of all the things that that are qualities that I carry and that I share and that I want to live and give and nourish and seed and so on. So and that's how that name kind of came in. I was also speaking about that with my partner. We kind of played with, kind of felt into different aspects and names, and that was the name that most resonated with me. It's Heilquell and .art, and that means in German it is healing. Like, literally it would just mean healing souls, but and it carries more, like the healing also in German is also the same word for whole. So it's like it has that healing, that holisticness, that, yeah, integrity as well. And then the source is, on one hand, it's a source of water, it's a spring. With that, it's the spring of life, it's the divine source. And it's also sourcing within ourselves. So it's like for me, it carries all those different notions and motions. And the funny thing was, when I was looking at, like, I wanted to create a website with that name again, and I was looking for domains, and then they offered the domain.art, and that felt just perfect because I am very artisanal. I love creative expression, and on the other hand, I see art as, like, in German, it's also the same, or it's similar to craft. So it's like it's the craft and the art of healing and of reconnecting with source and with ourselves. And also in this process, I think on every healing journey, creativity, art in that sense is on some level a fundamental part. And so this kind of merged into this name, or that felt really resonating to me. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing, like, just how it was birthed,
Yeah.
how this new name was unearthed. I love that. Healing Source,
Yes.
healing source is like the powerful, the creative, artful creation of healing with source. And I love
Yeah.
how you talk about water. Water, our emotions, we work with the water. And you recently put up a post on your story about how you said the body is purified by water and the ego is purified by love, or the intellect is purified, like so many things.
Mm.
So
Oh,
you
that
feel like,
was a repost from a wonderful person. Her name is Violetta. She's also doing very beautiful healing work. Yeah.
so it sounds like, do you feel with that water, with that element, it's like a purification, like a
Mm.
renewal?
Yeah, I think that's a very fundamental part in every healing journey as well, to let go of physical, energetic, emotional, of things that are old. And water is playing such a beautiful, can play such a beautiful part in it. Like, if we connect, even like on a scientific level, even just seeing water has proven to help with so many mental illnesses, like post-traumatic stress, depression, all of that. It's like scientifically proven even. And it's like, if we allow water if we allow ourselves to reconnect with water, we also could reconnect with ourselves, because we are like 90+% water. We are that, like, that element in such a high percentage. Yeah. And it's also interesting because I, like, especially in the past, I don't know, maybe, yeah, 1 year, I've been drawn much more to springs. Like, I came in UK, I came to Liverpool, where I was first kind of confronted in a way with a community where people really go to the spring to get their water, where people really cherish that spring that still is in the city. And that was so powerful. And also, in some way, I always, like, all my life was connected to water and felt called by the water. When I first started my journey, when I first sold my yurt and left Germany, it was with the calling of I felt called by the water. I needed to go to the sea. And also interesting, on my, I did the Camino, the pilgrimage in Spain this summer, and that was a beautiful, powerful experience. But at some point, I took a slight detour to a place, to a city where my partner and I have went to the year before, and we went to a spring there. We found a spring, an old Roman spring in the city center, And I just felt like I had to go to this town again, to the city. I didn't know why it was, and I got there late in the evening. And first thing I did when I was arriving there, I went to the spring, and it was like it was almost dried out. I was super shocked, but at that moment, I knew that the spring was what had called me into to coming back there. The spring had called me back to come to this place to do a water ritual, and I also went live here on Instagram and did a water healing meditation. I just felt like this was what I had to do. This is what I had come to keep working on that purification of the waters, and for the waters within us as for the waters of Mother Earth, of her body. Yeah.
Wow, that's that's very, to feel like the spring was calling you back, calling
Yeah.
you, it's a wonder, like, you know, it's a wonder. I feel like so many people, especially in my family, hear, us really opening ourselves to that receptivity to be able to be called. You hear about the call, but
Mm-hmm.
not only do we not answer the call, do we even hear the call? You know,
We,
what
we
does it
are
feel?
well practiced in not listening.
Okay, okay.
It's like rekindling our intuition is such a never-ending journey, but it begins when we reconnect with ourselves and when we go into nature. I think nature is a really, really powerful tool to relearn that. And intention, of course. I mean, if we invite that in, if we want to feel again, because that again, we spoke about disconnection. This comes from this disconnection. We disconnect from ourselves. We become numb in so many cases of trauma or of having experienced suffering. We become numb in that sense that we create behaviors. That could be eating, that could be drugs, that could be anything, basically, to not feel certain things. And if we not feel certain things, we also don't feel other things. So we miss those signals that are within our bodies, within our minds, within our realm of being. We miss them because we missed because we could not hold that feeling. And so I think that reconnecting is really like it's a bit of like it works both. It's like both is kind of reconnecting and both kind of works with each other. So yeah.
So holding this, coming from this healing source,
Mm.
you talked about qualities that you carry.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like are the loving qualities that you carry, that you enjoy about yourself, and how do you wish to use these qualities to create? What do you wish to create with these qualities?
Mm. Well, um, they're really combined in some way. Like the two main things that come up when you ask this question is a very big thing for me is that I want to support people and also the whole world in that sense in healing, which in some way for me is this aspect of reconnecting, of relearning, of re-establishing connection to ourselves, to nature, to life, a lot to life. Yeah. And that, yeah, so like on a more simple level, for example, at the moment I just love to share Reiki. It's like it's also such a blessing at the moment that I am here with my family and I can support my grandmother and my mum and people that I love and just be there for them with that in the physical as well. even though that's possible from wherever. But like, yeah, so it's for me there the physical support is a lot where I have a lot of kind of intuitive qualities of how to support, being it through energetic work, but also body work. You know, I'm trained in yoga. I love to experience different ways of embodiment and also inspire and encourage people on ways of reconnecting with their bodies, and that also in connection with nature. So there again, the kinds of teachings that I got to experience living with that medicine woman also influenced me very strongly. And then on another note, it is a lot of creative self-expression, but also like creating things that are supporting of that healing through different ways. It could be just through creating joy, through being beauty that can be appreciated, through nourishing, through moving someone with sound. And it's an interesting one that's also recently coming up more. Reclaiming the voice. It's like I'm still like on that journey myself, and yet I feel like this calling is coming up to also share that. And when I speak about callings that are coming up, that I still am. I mean, we all are still are always on our journey, but like that's more of a specifically to women to learn or to relearn to feel safe to be alone in nature and to walk alone, walk the land, because that's something that really struck me on the pilgrimage and through conversations with friends as well, and also with I shared that also on Instagram with the meeting that I had along the way recently, more on a recent journey, that it is still not normal for a woman to be going out on such adventures on her own. Like there's still such a big wrap of fears of, yeah, I mean, there are reasons for those fears in the past. It's like there is a reason where those things come from, but they're not necessarily serving us if we keep ourselves in that state. And yeah, this is a calling I don't yet, like I haven't yet created a space to share for, but where I feel like that will come at some point in the future, to open this space for women to hold the space for them to experience being in nature, being on their own, walking like that, and experiencing life like that.
Because how would you feel to witness more women experiencing that feeling?
It is very beautiful to experience that reestablishing of that trust, because it's like, if we go deep, it's the lack of trust in life, it's the lack of trust in ourselves and in being here. It is a lot connected to that victimhood perspective that we all take on at some point along our way. And it's just that, let's say, collectively in our society at the moment, women are more suffering from that, in that sense that there has been more sexual repression and violence against women. It's been like less safe for women to do certain things because of their gender, without that really being the cause of it, but it's just kind of happened to be expressed like that in this certain time and of age still. So it's like there's a lot of healing happening in that. It's like on some level it also feels as if it's coming back to themselves, coming back to oneself, because you can release such a big part of this programmed fear, of that fear that you have lived with so long, and I know this feel. For me, it's like if you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would not have been able to do that. I would not have felt safe or able to. So
Because that's what I was actually going to ask you, Elisabeth. Because you know, as you speak and you're talking about them, you know, the fears that they hold, the things they go through, they when
we
yeah, well, so when have you felt that? I mean, do you recall if you ever picked up that victim perspective? You know, that victim mentality, and if you did pick it up, when did you ever put it down? If you did put it down.
well, you know, for me, this topic of victimhood has been present since I can think of it, like at least since being old enough to reflect on these things. It's like I personally have experienced also sexual violence in my life, and know that, and from there, like in some way, it even, of course, on that journey of becoming more aware, it took me a while to realize that I am in that state of victimhood, that I still am in that state of complete overwhelmed with life in any way, like suffering from social anxieties, feeling like I just would not be able to make anything fit or work, and just a lot of overwhelm and numbness and helplessness, and feeling like I have no control about anything or any of that, like and I would not have been able to step out and just do something on my own. And what shifted that? I think the most shifting things are experiences with through settings or people that allow a leap, that allow a leap in a different reality. And it's at the same time, it's like kind of similar to that spiral that you might not even be aware how impactful certain experiences are at that time. It's like afterwards you realize, like a backward ripple, like, oh wow, I came a long way. And it's like every tiny bit is like building up on the other, until there's like, and it's like, maybe it's like a flower opening in slow motion, or I don't know, or a seed budding. Like a seed budding is probably the best fitting to seeds. Yeah. um yeah, and for me, I think, for me, in that sense, nature again was a big one. Like the first time, my first time ever camping was with my ex-boyfriend when I was 18 or something. That was my first time ever. Like I did not grow up with this kind of nature engagement, and that just sparked something. It sparked something so random that I bought without having an idea of it, but because I always had the vision to live differently, I bought a yurt, and I wanted to live in a yurt. So yeah, and then I got to meet, like I made this friend, and then I got to build the yurt in her garden and learn a lot from her, the medicine woman that I mentioned already. And it's like, in that was the first time for me coming from a place of complete social anxiety and basically having no friends and connections to all of a sudden being kind of exposed to people. And that kind of, in that space, a lot happened. It was really challenging for me as well. I went to therapy and a lot of things, and then I felt and followed that calling to lead there as well, which was also not that easy. Um, and that then was the biggest shift possible, because it was just going out. And that was also what I was yearning for, because I knew that everything I can want is limited to everything I have experienced, which is this little box. And if I want to find out what I really want, I have to open that box and experience something else. I have to experience a different reality, because otherwise I will never get out of it. And it would just feel like this yearning, but it's like hitting the wall, because I don't even know what this yearning is. So yeah, that was the biggest thing, and allowing the journey as well, like also allowing all those times when I didn't know where I would want to go next, or where I would go next, or where I would sleep the next night, or what to do, and kind of going with the ups and downs. And then the next massive thing for me was when I met my partner and when we traveled together, because that then was like the real shifting of like making really new experiences, because all of a sudden I had someone kind of like where there was a safe space together, so I could explore spaces that would not have been safe for me before. And that is where this is kind of what I want to create for other people. That was a lot.
Thank you for sharing that. It's interesting to just hear that, because when you're talking about not even being able to be discerning what that yearning is, like you weren't discerning that yearning, so you kept hitting the wall, the box that you were contained, and you couldn't kind of change. You couldn't get out from within, but how you began, you know? You hopped out of the box, you jumped out, you got up. But you're saying it was through the discovery of what that was that led you there, like a new reality and a new mentality. I love it.
And that's also an interesting one, speaking about mentality, because on my journey, you know, last time we spoke about like that I had all of this eating disorder stuff and so on, and that there was a shifting point in my life, and that then a lot of new things kind of came to me. And there was also a time, you know, I'm German, I'm native German, and the things that I started engaging with at that time were mostly in English. And this is till today a fascinating thing to reflect on for me, because it's like English became, I wouldn't say my second language, but it's actually more my first. And for me now, it's so hard to be in a place where I only speak German, because it feels again like it's that prison. It feels like this is this limited space, because it's like it's resonating with a different part of my being. There's it has its own program, its own grid that you can work with, but it's like each has its barriers, and having a different language was, I guess, my first leap. My first real leap was really engaging with things in a different language, because it opens up different ways in your thinking and your speaking and in the way you express and you feel yourself. And I mean, even I think, I don't know, I'm sure there's science about that, but you even change physically when you adapt to different languages. It's yeah, so this is a tip. If you don't have anything to, if you can't go anywhere else, if you can't really get out of your box, learn a different language.
This is really inspiring. You know, you're really encouraging me, because I was born in Germany. You
Were
know,
you?
I was born in Stuttgart. I got the opportunity to go and see the place that I was born in last year, and they gave us a tour around Stuttgart. Nice. But
I have family in Stuttgart too.
Say again?
My family has a Stuttgart connection as well.
Okay, awesome. You know, that was my first time witnessing it from when I was a baby, because I was only, you know, I was less than 1 year old when we left, so I didn't even remember. It kind of didn't remain in the realm of my reality. So when I went back, it was it for the first time. That's what it felt like. And I love how you say that the different language, you open yourself up to so many things learning new language. So what is the language of English, which you say is almost your first language? Just how does that feel different German? You know, what do you communicate in German?
Mm,
Necessarily communicate in English.
mm. I think one thing that I notice when I look at my relationship to those different languages is that in German I much more notice, let's say, my family programming of the way we used to speak, the way also of thinking, like very intellectual, critical, and so on, or also the humor, the thing, like there are things that come through, and it's like those patterns. It's like it's much easier to just be in a responsive mode of just speaking the way that it's kind of like programmed, um, without it being bad. But it's just really interesting to observe, and also how in like now when I speak about my work, it is so fascinating for me because I feel much more confident in English when it comes to, let's say, the spiritual or alternative realm. In German, I feel like there's so much to there are so many ways to tap on to step on somebody's feet, to make it wrong, to make it sound like this, or to be put in that box, or it just feels like much harder to express my truth in that language for me personally, which might be different for someone in a different societal setting, with a different background. But for me, that is something I like. Every time I sit down and want to write a text in both languages, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the first thing that comes up with that question.
Right, because when I went on your story, I had to translate it. You know, I had to take a screenshot and then
Mm-hmm.
translate so that I could.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I don't hear a lot of people saying that English allows them to express themselves so much better. You know, certain people,
Mm-hmm.
they might say the opposite. So that I think that English.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who say English is a programming language and so on, so that like seeing this very critical that there's so much English, and also in Germany, I mean, we in the German language there is a massive tendency to have more and more English words dribbling in over the last decades, and a lot of people see that very critically, naturally, obviously, um, because every language has their own heritage. It's like it is a heritage. It is a culture that is represented there, and it's kind of getting fused and yeah.
So when you talk about, circling back to when we were talking about nature and you speaking with the birds, you reminiscing with the robin, right? Is
Mm.
there a language that people could learn that they didn't even know existed? You know, when it comes to
Mm. Yeah, there is a language beyond words. There is a language of energy, and that is a language that can only be experienced internally. And that's also the only truth that we will ever find in this life, is the truth of what we experience through ourselves. And I think that this language can be very different. It is very different for every one of us because um, because of where we're at on our journey, and also because of our natural tendencies. For example, I am very sensitive. Like I get a lot of like sensory um, messages, responses from energies, people, beings, whatever. And on another level, I think if mm, no, we can engage with beings like the birds and in any of those ways. And I think that it can actually be a very sweet and funny and beautiful practice for someone for whom that is absolutely unimaginable, to stop and sit by a tree or by a bird and start actually speaking to them, to kind of just try something that seems so random, but um, but then let this grow silent again after there's kind of a comfort of like, okay, it's okay to engage with this being, and then to begin this communication or this connection kind of internally. And I think that the confidence and this kind of awareness and communication comes through just allowing to play with it again and again, just inviting ourselves to practice it.
Yeah, when you were allowing yourself to play, when you were learning Reiki, as if Reiki was a whole language, like energetic language.
It is.
Yeah, how did it feel to learn that language of energy, or to learn that language of your intuition, or to learn, that language of healing?
I still am like continuously learning more and more of that, and it's like it's really, it's also slow. Like for me, it's slow and fast at the same time. But I remember when I did my first Reiki course, it's like I wanted it. Like I was curious about it. I wanted to learn it, and yet like I couldn't yet feel it. And it's like it takes trust in the process, because it's really learning to trust ourselves again. Because again, especially as children, most of us are aware of all of those things, but because of circumstances, because of whichever reasons, we kind of we kind of overlay this kind of awareness, and so it's kind of like unveiling it takes a lot of care and compassion with ourselves, and also because we are mostly living in very kind of intellectual, reasonable, technical, yeah, just missing a word, questioning societies where so many things are put so far off. So it takes this tiny but massive step of extra effort to stick with their journey of wanting to uncover. And for me, also what helps is again and again engaging with other people who are working on this level, or who are aware of that. And because the only moment when you will trust in it is coming through feeling it, in my perception, because feeling is the feeling is the only thing that's real. So, and the feeling is healing, which is a nice kind of double bind, because it heals that wound of having missed our own voice as a child, having taken like a path where we overshadow our truth, and reconnecting with our truth. And also it is, especially when we're on that journey of kind of opening up more to energy and purifying ourselves more, it is also becoming aware of those moments maybe when the energy is too much for us, and when we kind of become numb from that, or when we have habits of like avoiding the energy because we're not yet used to holding it, or where, for example, we fall asleep during meditation, or we pass out, or just now at the moment I'm like doing a next degree in Reiki, and when I practice with myself, it's like at the moment it feels like I'm opening to a new level of energy, and it's like my system is like not yet 100% able to hold it, and it's like when I work with it, I sometimes am like in that in between state where I'm like almost passing away, or like almost knocking out, and it's like, okay, coming back to it. Okay, I see. I'm with myself. It is safe. I'm here. I'm holding it, and I'm able to hold that energy, and I allow that it at the moment is still challenging. Yeah. I mean, it's also similar to when people start doing breathwork for the first time and they're like all dizzy and fuzzy because they're not used to having so much life, so much prana, so much chi running in their system. And it's just kind of, yeah, patience and commitment with that. I believe that every little bit counts, even if at times we feel like there's no point in doing it because we haven't yet seen any like massive results. But it's staying with that reveals the beauty and the magic, and then you get the boost.
Yes, yes. Then the boost comes, you know. Then it comes when you stay in there, you
Yeah.
know. Stick with it.
Yeah.
You keep going and you keep growing. It keeps flowing,
Yeah.
you know. Flowing.
Beautifully said.
You know, I love what you say, Elizabeth, about that what you feel is real. Like it's
Mm.
the things that you feel are real. Because if I could ask you one more question, do you have or room for one more question?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm free.
So you pointed to your head when you were talking about, you know, the questionable, the reasonable, the intellectual, the
Mm-hmm.
you know, the skeptical, like
Mm-hmm.
the cynical, all these things that but people that are challenged or that
Mm-hmm.
feel they're or that feel that someone is doing something hurtful to them, right? Yelling harmful words or something. You might see them say, "Are you talking to me?" Right? They say, "Are you
Mm-hmm.
talking to me?" And when they say, "Are you?" They don't say, "Talking to me,"
Mm-hmm.
right? They say, "Are you talking to me?" It's almost intentionally they're pointing to where they think me is, as
Mm-hmm.
though it's not me up here, but this must
Mm-hmm.
be down here. So I love how you say what you feel is real. Like when it comes to I am, where do you feel you are? You know?
Oh, let me drop into myself for a moment to feel that. At the moment, I feel a lot like center in my center, so like in my solar plexus. But I would say somewhere between heart and root. Mm. And you?
Yes, thank you for sharing. You know, thank you for sharing. I love how, you know, a lot of the conversations that we have, it's it's getting into the heart space, out of the head space. You know, we can
Yeah.
have time in the head space. We can spend a lot of time in our thoughts, in our thinking, and constant. But we can also come back. You know, and I feel like
Mm.
it is intuitive that can keep on growing. So, thank you for these messages. You know, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thank you for just coming on and speaking your truth and speaking this and just, you know, letting people know that, yeah, you know, this is available. It's available for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing and holding the space and for your questions and just for being out there doing the work that you do. It's such a gift and such a blessing. It's like whenever like whenever I engage with something that you share, it's just so it's like all of my body says yes. It's like so many resonances of like thank you for reminding us of those truths and of our own ways. So thank you so much.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Blessings. So, you know, I can't wait to see where you go from here and time.
Thank you.
Right.
Blessings your way. Until soon.